got my super cool hat on for this video. Right, so you probably are aware of that sudden wave of dread that hits out of nowhere. Maybe it's going for an interview or walking into a room full of people or driving somewhere new for the first time. Maybe even just hearing your phone ring unexpectedly. Whatever it is, whatever makes you anxious or stressed, that's not you being weak or something being wrong with your brain. That was your amygdala taking over your nervous system before your thinking brain even had a chance to come in. Alright, so today we're talking about why your brain treats things like a genuine threat, even though they're not. And why you can go from I'm fine to a full-blown panic within seconds. So what's actually happening in your brain when anxiety hits? When you encounter something scary or a potential threat, your brain processes it through two pathways. One of them is super fast and primitive, and the other one is slower and more analytical. To break it down, the thalamus part of the brain receives the information first and sends it straight to the amygdala. And this is why that first jolt of fear, it just sort of comes out of nowhere. And it's a survival mechanism and it can't be stopped intentionally. So you kind of just need to let it happen. So your amygdala receives this information and makes you feel all those uncomfortable, anxious feelings. That kicks off the threat response. And that all happens before your cortex, the thinking part of your brain, has a chance to assess whether the thing is actually dangerous or not. So that first fear is natural and unstoppable, but here's the thing, it goes away quite quickly if you just leave it alone. But whether that first fear fades naturally or turns into intense anxiety or even a panic attack, that all comes down to what comes next. So when your cortex eventually catches up, if it misreads those sensations as real danger, instead of recognising them as just a harmless passing alarm, that fear will increase. This is anxiety sensitivity or fear of fear. In other words, the panic isn't coming from what triggered you in the first place. It's coming from your thinking brain treating your body's natural alarm system like a threat. Now, I'm not sure if I explained that great, so I'm going to give you an example to show you as clear as possible how anxiety works in the brain. So here is a social anxiety example. Maybe some people can relate to this. Right, so imagine you walk into a party where you only know the host. So you walk in, it's full of people you don't know, they're coming up to you, you're introducing yourself to everyone. The first thing that would happen is your thalamus would receive all of that information and immediately sends it straight to your amygdala. So there's no processing, there's no analysis, just an instant alarm. And that's when your heart will start racing, you start sweating, whatever physical sensations that you tend to have. Then your amygdala triggers the fear response. Adrenaline will start flooding your system and your body is reacting like there's a genuine threat, right? So you're panicking, you're not feeling great, and at this stage, your cortex, the part of your brain that thinks and can process things, hasn't caught up yet. Then your cortex arrives, it assesses the situation, it says, oh, loads of new people, this is a bit uncomfortable, but we're literally just standing here and we're actually safe. So that's a natural response, and if that is your response, the fear will fade naturally. But if your cortex catches up and thinks things like, wait, why is my heart racing so much? I feel hot, I'm sweating, something must be wrong, everyone can tell how anxious I am right now. If that's what your cortex says, that's when the problems come up, right? It's sort of misread the first initial feelings as a real danger, instead of recognising it as an initial alarm that will eventually pass. And then it just turns into this spiral. There's more adrenaline, there's more cortisol, and that ends up making you anxious about feeling anxious. You know that joining conversations usually works, you've done it before, but in that moment, with all that adrenaline going through your body, your brain has sort of lost access to that information. When it comes down to it, the overwhelming fear isn't coming from the party, it's coming from treating your own fear response as a threat. Here's a final thing to remember. You're never anxious as a permanent state. You're a person currently experiencing some anxiety. Try to avoid identifying with it. Right? These feelings and sensations, they will pass. So when you're in those moments, when you're completely overwhelmed, try and take a step back and remind yourself that this is just an adrenaline flood. That first fear that you feel is normal. It should be expected, especially in new or unfamiliar situations. And the spirals that happen, that's just your cortex misreading the situation. If this helped you understand how your anxiety works a little bit more, I run a free experience where I help people learn this stuff and be less fearful of anxiety itself. So if that sounds interesting, the link will be down below and you're more than welcome to join.